Wait. Yeah.
Maybe some connection.
Yeah. Oh, I think this is right. Okay, there we go. I think it's good. Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Cynthia, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my science research experiment. This presentation is kind of divided into two parts. So first of all, I'll be talking about what middle school science research is like, how it works, the logistics, and all the different aspects of science research. And then I'll be moving on to Broadcom MASTERS, which is a competition that I recently participated in, and I think it's a really good experience for everyone to participate in too. So let's start off. About me, I'm a 9th grader at the Harker School. I've really been interested in math and science since I was in maybe like 5th or 6th grade. I started in science research last year in 8th grade. I got involved in this program through my school, Harker, and last year this October, I was a Broadcom MASTERS finalist, and I attended the Broadcom MASTERS competition in October. So let's get started. So what is science research? Science research is not an activity where you go into a lab and you collect data and you analyze things through microscopes. Science research is something where you use your interest and passion in science in order to help solve problems in the world. And so this can be through anything. It can be through a really small scale project. It doesn't have to be something big. You don't have to change the world. All you have to do is really consider one small problem by itself and see how that problem can be solved. And you can make minor improvements, and these minor improvements are the things that will make the major changes in the future. So one thing that science research is all about is thinking of ideas, and especially new ideas, to help change the world. You don't have to just sit down and just think of ideas like, oh, what am I going to do for science research? What you really want to do is take these ideas from daily inspiration. So for example, if you're reading a science book or a science magazine and you find something that's interesting and you find something that really intrigues you, then you can do some research on this topic, see what there is to do in this topic, and see what you as an individual are able to figure out in this area. So what I did was I did something on the drought. Since we all live in California, we don't have enough water, so I did something to help the drought. I'll be explaining more about my project later. So how does it work? So as I mentioned before, you start with an idea. So this idea can be a scientific question, an engineering goal, or anything of that sort. So for example, one question can be, does sunscreen help prevent skin cancer? And so most people would say yes. However, if you want to think of a new idea, some people would say no. Sunscreen does not prevent skin cancer. In fact, it leads to skin cancer. And so this is an example of a really new and novel idea that would really appeal to the public, since it goes against normal human intuition, and it really is something novel. And so what you want to think of is something that is new, something that's interesting, and something that you really want to do. So like something that you really like to do, because if you like doing it, then obviously you'll like doing your project, and that way you'll be able to get more done. So after you propose this scientific question or engineering goal, you want to set up your experiment. So think through your idea. Think through what is actually the problem here? What am I trying to solve? How am I as a middle schooler going to be able to solve this project? And so whether it means asking your parents for something, or asking your teacher, or asking your friends to help be part of your experiment, just go for it. Do what you think is probably going to help you, and don't set limits on yourself. So after you set up your experiment, conduct your experiment. So conducting your experiment, you can conduct it at home, you can conduct it at school. I would not recommend conducting it at a college or a university in middle school, because that's going a little overboard. Most of the time you want to start just doing a simple project at home or at school. So what I did was I did a project at home. So my project was about plants, and what I did was I grew my plants at home. And my parents gave me part of a room to grow all of my plants. Obviously, I didn't have all of the materials that I needed to grow all of these plants, so I asked my science teacher and my school to fund me and buy these materials. So if your school has one of these programs to help you get started, or you have a science teacher who's willing to help you, then ask them for help. And after you conduct your experiment, collect data. So data collection is very important, because that's the thing that represents all of the work you've done. So your data should be in terms of, you should collect data in terms of the problem you're trying to solve. So if you're trying to decrease the amount of time that it takes to germinate a plant, then you would measure how much time it took for every plant to germinate. And make sure you have precise data calculations, because if your data is not precise, then it doesn't accurately reflect what you actually did in the project, and when you present it, it's gonna look kind of sloppy. So after you collect all of your data, you want to analyze and make conclusions. So analysis can include anything from compiling all of your data into charts, to just looking at your data and seeing what important pieces of information are in my data. So the first thing that I did to analyze my data was I used this software app called Numbers, and most of you probably have Macs or something at home, and you have Numbers, and it's just, you can use any app or software or online software to make graphs. And these graphs are really important because they give the audience, or your judge basically, a visual representation of your data and what you achieved in your experiments. And after you make these graphs, you want to make conclusions from them. So you see, what does this graph represent? So if you see high bars or low bars or different values of something, you want to see what conclusions you can make. So after you conclude everything and you compile everything onto a separate document, then you want to present your project at your local science fair. So for most of you, that's going to be Synopsis Science Fair, which is the regional science fair for Santa Clara. I'll explain more on Synopsis later. But presentation is really key to a science research project, because if you don't present your project well, then you won't be able to really tell your audience what you've done in your research. So even if you've done an amazing job doing your research, setting up your experiment, collecting data, analyzing your data, a science research project isn't really complete without a good presentation. So presentation comes in two parts. So the first part of presentation is your poster board. And so what I recommend for a poster board is that you separate it into different parts. So the first part is your introduction, and then you have your objectives and criteria, and then you have your methods, you have your results, you have your analysis, conclusions, and then further research. So you can find all of these, you can find like these different components online, and you really want to have a clear poster board. So your judge or audience knows what you did in your presentation and can clearly extrapolate the information that you present on your poster board. The second and more important part of presentation is your speech, or your little conversation with the judge. And in this conversation, you really want to be well prepared for any questions that the judges will have for you, including how you thought of this idea, why you chose different variables in your experiment, and how you did certain things. So really be prepared for different types of questions. And now I'll be talking about my project. So as I mentioned before, my project is on the drought, since California is in a drought. So what I did was I did some research to see what actually was causing this drought. And I found that agriculture, which is farming, agriculture takes up 80 to 90% of California's water supply. So I thought if I could decrease the amount of water that's needed in agriculture, then that can make a really big impact on the drought. So what I thought was, So what I thought was, if every seed has its own like little water provider, then that can reduce the amount of water that's needed. So what I made was a capsule. And this capsule was kind of like the temporary home for the seed. I put the seed inside the capsule, and the capsule was composed of a pod, a biodegradable filter, and water crystals. And this would be like the thing that the seed was placed in during germination. And what I found from my capsule was that this, what I found from experimentation and data analysis was that my capsule actually decreases the amount of time it needs to germinate, and it decreases the amount of water that's needed to germinate. And so I found that this was a really beneficial experiment to help the drought, since it would decrease water needs by a lot, and thus we would have more water in California. So I presented my project at Synopsys Science Fair. So now I'll be talking about science versus engineering projects. So if you're going to enter at a local science fair or Synopsys, you're going to have to choose between either a science project or an engineering project. So for science projects, it's kind of like the normal 7 steps of scientific processes that you learn in school. So it's like use question, hypothesis, data collection, conclusion, and all of that. And science projects would be like, what is the result? What is like the effectiveness of this on that? And you'll have different variables and experiments in your research and in your experimentation. So in a science project, you basically want to find what is the result of this on this. And in a science project, the main part of your science project is the hypothesis. So that's the question. And it's okay if you disprove your hypothesis, meaning that your hypothesis was wrong. In fact, that's actually good because it shows that you learned something during your experimentation. Now I'll be moving on to engineering projects. I'm more familiar with engineering projects because I did an engineering project last year. So an engineering project is a little different than what you'd normally learn at school. In engineering projects, you want to propose a problem that is currently not being solved in the world. So this can be anything from different diseases to different environmental problems, or anything that you find that is bothering you or your family members or your peers or anything. Just find a problem that is currently causing the world some harm or something, and see if you're able to solve this problem. So after you establish your objective, you want to move on to finding design criteria and constraints. So this is kind of setting up what you want to build, how you're going to build it, what your built product needs to achieve, and what materials you're going to need. So after you build your prototype, you test it through normal simulated conditions. So in my case, I tested them in normal farming conditions, and I grew all of my seeds. And after you grow them, or after you conduct your experiment, you want to collect your results. And as I said, collect your results, make them accurate, make sure that they accurately reflect what you did in your science research project. And last of all, for both of these, you want to present your results. So whether it be going to a science fair or presenting in front of your parents, just do a simple 5 to 10 minute presentation in front of your parents. Your parents can serve as judges, ask you questions on different aspects of your science research. So that's kind of like a mock presentation. And that's really going to help you in the actual science fair. So now Synopsys Science Fair. So this is probably the science fair that if you guys do a science project, this is probably the fair that you're going to attend, because it's Santa Clara. And so the thing about Synopsys Science Fair is that if you participate, that's already a really good achievement, because getting through the application process of Synopsys Science Fair is already very difficult. So the application process includes many different forms like permission slips, etc. But in addition, you also have to write a really detailed research plan and telling the reviewers what you're actually going to do in your project, so they know that it's going to be a somewhat successful science project with potential. So really go through the application process carefully. If you need any help, you can contact your teacher or contact me or something. Contact someone who's experienced, and then tell them to look through it, make sure that it's good to go, and then submit it. Because many times in middle school, when you submit your application, it often gets rejected the first time, and you have to make more revisions, and that takes a long time. And it's sometimes just worth just going through it and making sure it's right. So at Synopsys Science Fair, it's it's in like the Santa Clara Convention Center. So it's a huge convention center. So like there's around like maybe like a few hundred people in there, including the judges, including all the presenters. And when you present your project, you're really going to have to be clear about your presentation. You're going to want to communicate very well, and you want to be loud, obviously, because there's so many people talking. So what you're going to do at Synopsis Science Fair is you present it to judges. So judges come over, they say hi, and then you greet them. And you tell them about your project. You give a 5 to 10 minute summary of what you did in your project. So in this summary, you really want to go through everything carefully, but you don't want to go too deep, because that just kind of takes away from the actual gist or the topic of the science research project. And so after you present to your judges, they'll give you some questions. So it's going to be like, how did you think of this idea? Or how did you achieve this? Or what different difficulties did you face? And the difficulties that you face are very normal. For example, in my experimentation, I faced a lot of failures, actually. My first experimentation was completely inaccurate, because I didn't even use like graduated cylinders to measure my water. I planted my seeds too deep, and overall it was just not a successful experiment. And what I learned from my first experimentation was that you always want to try again, improve on what mistakes you made, and really continue through the project, even if you fail. So my second experimentation was very fruitful. It gave me a lot of good results, and I really was able to learn a lot. And what judges are really looking for is to see how you overcame your difficulties and how you corrected them and made it a really successful experiment. So don't expect everything to go perfectly, everything to go the way you want to, because science research is basically all about making mistakes. So judges, there's two types of judges at Synopsis Science Fair. The first type is category judges. So everyone's going to have some category judges visit them. There's going to be around maybe like 5 or 6 category judges that visit you, and they're just going to be assessing your knowledge of your research and just asking you normal questions. And these category judges are probably just parents who are volunteering or teachers from schools, and they're not going to be that professional or that experienced in your area, so don't expect them to know everything the first time you tell them. So like if you guys do debate, there's this thing called lay judges, and these lay judges are basically like parent judges who don't know much about the topic. So when you're communicating with these types of judges, you really want to be clear and simplify your language in order for your judges to understand you. And in Synopsis Science Fair, you're separated into categories. So these categories are based on what type of project you have. So I was in plant science last year, and I had around 12 people in my category. And so your category judges are going to judge all 12 people and place you by first, second, third, honorable mention, and stuff like that. There's another type of judge, and it's the special award. And so these special awards, they don't come to everyone. So don't be discouraged if you don't get a special award, because they're pretty rare, and if you get one, you're gonna have a lot of fun, and it's gonna be a really good experience talking to the special award judges, because they have chosen your project out of the entire group, and they really want to speak to you at a really large depth about what you did. So these special awards, there's a lot of special awards in Synopsis. So these range from some American Health Society special award to some vacuum cleaner special award, and there's many different types of special awards. So you'll know if a judge is a category or special award. And at Synopsis Science Fair, obviously it's very competitive because this is a big area, and everyone is just talking. So don't be discouraged if you don't win something on your first try, because when I was presenting, there were people to the left of me, to the right of me, in front of me that were getting more judges than I was, and I got kind of discouraged by that. But don't really be afraid to just tell the judges what you actually did and be honest. Don't sugar everything up. Don't say something that you actually didn't do. Be honest about your project, because the judges can probably tell if you're honest or not. And if you're honest, it's gonna really show through for you as a scientist and what you did in your experiment. So my experience with Synopsis Science Fair was, I went inside and I was super scared because there were so many people in the room and I had no idea where to go. So I kind of just followed my friends around the room, and then I got to my place and I just set everything up, and I kind of just got through the experience. Like I talked to the judges. I just did it. And make sure to bring lots of water because you're gonna get very tired. But anyway, Synopsis Science Fair is really good because it gives you the experience of talking to a very diverse population of people. There's going to be people who have PhDs in their subjects, and there's going to be people who have no idea what your project is about. And what your job at a science fair is to communicate your project to all of these types of people. So you really have to adapt to who your judge is and present well to every single one of them. Okay, so now I'm going to reflect on my science research experiment. So the first thing that I took out of this experiment was that you have to think of something that is novel. You have to think of something that is new, and make sure that this project idea really like comes to you. You really want to do this idea. Don't choose something that your parents tell you to do. Don't choose something that your teacher tells you to do. Choose something that you really want to do and something that you really have a passion for. Because in my case, I thought of my idea of a capsule, and sometimes my parents would give me different ideas like, oh, try to do something in the area of diabetes because that sounds cool. But in fact, like, if I did diabetes, I probably would not be able to do much in that area because so many professionals are working on it. So really choose something that takes you to heart and choose something that you're truly interested in. And my second piece of advice would be to conduct your experiment accurately. Don't rush through it. Take your time to think through all the variables. Take your time to think through how you're going to set up your experiment, how you're going to conduct it, and what variables you're going to measure at the end. And one of the most important things is keep a laboratory notebook. So this laboratory notebook is something that you're going to keep. It's kind of like your journal for science research. Thank you. So you really want to keep an accurate lab notebook, and make sure every single time you work on your science research experiment, you always want to record something. Even if it's just, oh, I checked on my plants today and they were growing well. That says a lot about how careful you are of a person, and it really shows the judges that you really took the time to think through your experiment, that you really took the effort to record everything. Because the notebook is kind of the basis of, it's kind of like something that accompanies you along your journey through science research. The next thing is your poster board. So I talked about your poster board, but you really want to have a neat design. Don't use flashy colors. Don't use like Comic Sans. Use some professional fonts. Maybe use like black or white or dark blue as your background, because that really appeals to you as a professional scientist instead of just someone who's fooling around with science. And last of all is your presentation. And I can't emphasize how important this presentation is, because the presentation is all the judges see of you. If you don't give a good presentation, then the judges won't know how well you did your project. So enunciate clearly in your presentation, go slowly, and speak loudly, especially at synopsis. So now I'll be moving on to Broadcom Masters. So here's some pictures of Broadcom Masters. So now you may be wondering, what is Broadcom Masters? So Masters stands for Math, Applied Science, Technology, Engineering, Rising Stars. So Broadcom Masters is the most prestigious and it's like a national science fair for 30 young scientists who really have a passion in science. And if you get to participate in Broadcom Masters, the experience itself is really, really great, and you'll learn a lot from this. You'll really learn a lot from this experiment, not just scientifically, but also in terms of life lessons, teamwork, etc. Now the second question would be, how do you qualify for Broadcom Masters? So if you participate in your local science fair, which is probably Synopsis, if you place first in your category of around 8 to 12, then you'll be automatically nominated to apply for Broadcom Masters. So if you place first, then you're going to be a nominee of Broadcom Masters. So if you're a nominee, you're going to be sent an application. And this application is really rigorous. So you really want to take maybe a few weeks to complete it, because I know in my case, I completed it on the last few days. I literally submitted my application an hour before the deadline, and I don't really think that's that's what you want, because you really want to think through all the questions of the application, and you really want to show the judges of Broadcom Masters who you truly are, what you did in your experiment, and how you did your experiment. So some application questions might be, how did you think of your project, and what your goals were, what methods you used, what conclusions you got. And again, one thing that judges are looking for is to see how you faced your difficulties, how you overcame them, and how you corrected to them. And in this application, they don't only want to know about you as a scientist. They also want to know about you when you're not doing science. For example, when you're doing sports or different visual arts, different activities like that. So in my case, I wrote a lot about volleyball because I really love volleyball as a sport. And so that was so there's like an academic part of the application, and there's like a non-academic part that you also want to focus on. And then in Broadcom Masters, there is around 2,000 to 3,000 applicants that are chosen to apply. And this there's a selection process that you go through. So after you fill out your application, the judges are going to take a few months to look through your application, carefully read them, and they're going to choose 300 semifinalists from this pool of 2,000 to 3,000 applicants. And so these 300 semifinalists, they're given some prizes, and their teachers are given prizes. And it's really great to just become a semifinalist, because you become part of the Broadcom Masters alumni community, and you really you get to have your face be seen in a presentation, and it's just nice to be a semifinalist. And from these 300 semifinalists, there's 30 finalists that are chosen to compete in the national competition. And they get an all-expense paid trip to DC, where they get to participate in a variety of activities, which I will explain now. So, what did I do as a finalist in Broadcom Masters? So, when I first got the call that I was a finalist, I was just so shocked that I just sat on the floor and I was like, really? And then I took some time to get over the fact that I was actually a finalist. And when I went to DC, I was just so excited, because everyone there really loves science. They're not doing science because they think that it's a good academic activity. They really do science because they're interested in helping the world, and they're really interested in science. So at Broadcom Masters, I met 29 other people who had the same interest as me, and we all just really made each other really excited, and we had a great time at Broadcom Masters. In addition, I also presented my project to many professionals. So these judges are really experienced in their areas, and they know about your project before you go. So it's really nice to discuss your project with them, and just to explain just to tell them why you did your project and how you did your project, and just really tell them how much you love science research and why you did your project. In addition, the main part of Broadcom Masters are the team challenges. So they assign you into different teams by color. So I was the white team, as shown by my t-shirt. And in your teams of 5, you really get to bond with them as you do different activities. So we got to work with different pieces of technology, such as the Raspberry Pi. We got to work with motors, we got to work with robots, and we did many hands-on experiments that I had no idea even existed. In addition, I also met many professionals in the area of STEM. So these professionals, most of them were actually Broadcom Masters or Intel alumni, and we got to talk with them, we got to ask them how Broadcom Masters shaped their career path, and really got to meet them and know how STEM has affected their lives. In addition, I also won $2,500 and an iPad, but after looking at this experience as a whole, I really don't think the money prize takes a lot of the takeaway that I got. Most of the stuff that I got from Broadcom Masters was through the experiences and the memories that I got through my week at DC. And I visited a lot of places, and I had a lot of fun. So first, let me explain about the project presentations in Broadcom Masters. So in Broadcom Masters, it's not necessarily your normal presentation that you'll give to judges at Synopsis. Since the judges already know at your project a lot, they really ask some really interesting questions that I've never been asked before. And it really pushes you to your limits to think through these questions and give them an answer which you scientifically think is correct. And the main part of project presentations was the 3-hour public viewing. So this was in DC. So I was basically, all 30 finalists were talking the entire 3 hours because so many people came to see our projects. And it was just really eye-opening because I had no idea that there were so many young people that were interested in science and who really wanted to learn about science. So overall, that was a really good experience. So here's some pictures of my time at Broadcom Masters. So in the top are some of the other finalists, and we got to go to the Chesapeake Bay. We got to put on these waterproof waders, and we got to wade into the Chesapeake Bay and fish different crabs or plankton or jellyfish, and we got to analyze these samples. And so what Broadcom Masters provides you with is a fun learning experience where you can bond with your peers, you can have fun, and most of all, you can learn about science. Here are 2 of the finalists from the yellow team, and they're working on building a Raspberry Pi. So in the Raspberry Pi challenge, most of us had no idea what was going on because we had never worked with the technology before. And what I love was that most of us were able to, whether it be researching the Raspberry Pi online or reading through the instruction manual, we were all able to figure out what was going on and in the end build a pretty successful project. And here's my team. We're working on trying to see how we can incorporate the different pieces of the Raspberry Pi into our little machine. So Broadcom Masters is in Washington, D.C. And so this obviously is a really good environment to do science and to learn about science because we got to go to the White House. We met Megan Smith, who is the Officer of Technology at the White House. So we got to meet a lot of distinguished people. We got to go to a lot of monuments, the Washington Monument, World War II Monument. We got to visit memorials, museums, and we had a really good time eating at different restaurants in DC. So now I'll talk about the team challenges. The team challenges are really the crucial part of Broadcom Masters because in any other science fair, what you're really doing is just telling the judge about how good your project is. But at Broadcom Masters, not only do they want to know about your project, they also want to know about you as a scientist and how you work in a team and how you work around with other people, because that's what really matters in the long run. So during these team challenges, we got to display our teamwork and we got to display our leadership. So in this challenge, we got to work in a professional LED facility along with other professionals, and we were asked to build a robot crab arm. And in this project, most of us had no idea. Most of us were using hydraulics, which is the pumping system to help move the robot crab arm. And a lot of us had no experience in these motor area, in the area of motors or in the area of machines. But I know one of my teammates was able to step up as a leader, and he was able to tell us how everything went on, and he was able to tell us how to build things because his project was about that. So in the team challenges, really display your leadership and also take into account other people's ideas, because a lot of times in the team challenges, we all had our own idea. So we were like, oh, my idea should be the best because it's my idea. And then another person would be like, no, we should do this. And in the end, we were all just fighting over whose idea we should follow. But I think that it really benefits you to listen to other people's ideas and take in their ideas and see how you can adapt your idea to follow their idea. Here's some more pictures about Broadcom Masters. So over the course of the week, we got to see radioactive particles, we got to analyze the brain, we got to build Raspberry Pis, and we got to visit a ton of different places and work in many professional facilities, such as Georgetown University Laboratories, and also the Smithsonian Environmental Center. So overall, it was just really nice to see the world in a different place. So it was really nice to see what it was like to be a science professional. And here's my overall takeaway from Broadcom Masters. So at Broadcom Masters, I met 29 other people who were just like me, and every one of them had done really successful projects to get to this level. And when I looked at their projects, there were people that wanted to be the first person on Mars, And so most of you would think that it's a really absurd idea, but it is those ambitions and goals that really drive someone to continue through their project. And so don't be afraid to pursue a project that seems really hard or cheesy or unscientific, because if it really interests you, then you'll be able to achieve a lot in this area, and you'll be able to really work hard on your project. Another thing is that you accept failure, learn from it, and fix your mistakes. So this is one of my favorite pictures from Broadcom Masters, because we were trying to build a ramp that was going to land on a button that was going to trigger a light to turn on. But in the end, we couldn't get the button to work. And so this was in the last minute, so we were having time challenges, and this was in the last minute. And all of us were on the ground when we were trying to figure out a different solution to achieve the goal. And although we didn't really succeed in the end, we still learned a lot from how important a backup plan is and how important teamwork is. And so this really shows the concept of how failure is important and how you can learn from it. In addition, I learned so much about teamwork. So sometimes you want to be a leader, step up when it's your area of expertise. So when you're experienced in an area, you want to step up, tell other people how you should do stuff. But when someone else's idea is good, you should accept their idea and use their idea to make a successful product. And I also learned that presentation is key. So at Broadcom Masters, everyone was able to present really clearly, and they were loud, they were clear, and they enunciated everything clearly. So especially the person who won the grand prize, she was super loud, she was super spirited, and overall, she was just a leader. And even though she's small and she's only in 8th grade right now, she was able to cheer all of us up, to get our spirits up, and get us excited. Also, when you're at Science Fair, make new friends, because the people around you are all people who are interested in science. And when you make friends and you talk with them about science, you yourself become excited about science too. And that really generates the energy up of your group, and it really motivates you to do more science. Another thing is take your time. Don't rush through your project. So really look through, really think through every step that you're doing. Don't just do something because it seems right, because sometimes actions are irreversible, and you really want to think through everything that you're doing. And last, also, don't really focus on words, because when you focus on words, you're only thinking why the judge wants to vote me up, or why the judge wants to vote me at first place. And when you're thinking of that, you're not really being a scientist, you're being more of a competitor. And that's not really going to help you achieve anything in the long run. So don't focus on words. And last of all, love what you do and be excited about it. So if you really love your project, then you'll be really excited, you'll be motivated to do it, and you'll really achieve good results. So now, there's a question, why should middle schoolers, students, do science research and apply for Broadcom Masters? And I have so many answers to this. I could talk for a whole day on this, and I still would not be done. But in conclusion, there are a few things on which I would encourage you to do science research. So first of all, the entire experience itself is just so great. It's so amazing, and I really learned so much from it. So in your science class, you probably sit down in your classroom and you listen to your teacher lecture, and you take notes and you take tests. And for a lot of people, that's what science is. But for me, what I learned from science research is that it's really solving problems in the world from your perspective, and on the way to achieving your goals, you'll meet difficulties, you'll meet successes too. And you really want to follow through with these successes and failures and make sure that you really learn something from it. In addition, you'll also meet really great people. So at my time in DC, or at my time at Science Fair, I got to meet a lot of people. For example, at my state science fair, the California State Science Fair, the person across from me was an Intel ISEF participant, and she was also a Broadcom Masters national finalist 2 years ago. And so what I learned from her is she really inspired me to continue through Broadcom Masters and to really do my application well, because Broadcom Masters is truly an amazing experience. So in conclusion, I think that the people around you at science fairs are all great people who all love science, and take your time to meet them, get to know who they are, and keep in touch with them. Also, practice makes perfect. So if you're thinking of how you can be an Intel finalist or how you can participate in Intel ISCF or STS or Regeneron STS, you really want to start practicing at the middle school level, because when you're doing science research, you have to write a lot, you have to present a lot, and you have to conduct experiments accurately. And if you don't do it right the first time, that is totally fine, because that's the whole point. Practice makes perfect. If you make mistakes and you learn from them, then obviously in the future you'll do better. Also, this is just kind of like a side benefit, but there's lots of prizes at every level. And these prizes aren't just money prizes. They're prizes of meeting new friends, getting these experiments, getting these memories, and just having a great time. And in 2017, you could be a Broadcom MASTERS finalist, and you could be earning a trip to DC. So how can you get started? So let's see. So you first want to think of an idea that really appeals to you. And so after you have thought of this idea, you want to contact your teacher, your parents, or your school to ask them if there's any funding from the school or any programs at the school that will help you make this project a reality. And so at my school, there was a program called Science Research Program, and there were different mentors, and I really got started through this program. But I know a lot of schools who don't have these programs, and it really takes the student's initiative to go ask the teacher, to go talk with the school about your project, and to assign a mentorship, and to follow through with your experiments. And last of all, just have fun, because science research itself is just a really fun activity. So thanks for listening. Do you guys have any questions? I'm open to any questions. Yeah. Oh, thank
you. Yeah, so you mentioned your school has that program. What school you are in middle?
Oh, I go to Harker.
Oh, middle
Harker School, yeah. So following up on that, I know Harker has a really set program where only 8th graders can do projects, and so really take that opportunity, work with your mentor well, if your school has this program. If not, then find a mentor and ask him or her if you can conduct an experiment with them. Yeah.
So when you were conducting your experiment, did you join a STEM club at school or something?
So I did do some STEM clubs last year. There is a math club at my school, but it's not really the club that affects your science research experiment, because your science research experiment, all it requires is your own initiative and just a mentor to kind of just be there to help you and guide through the process. So you don't have to join, unless you go to some specific school that requires you to go to a club. You don't really have to go to any clubs to help you. If your school has a program, then that's great, because then they can provide you with experience. If not, then just kind of work on your own and ask your teacher if they know anyone who could help you. Yeah. Thank you. No problem. Yeah.
So if you have an idea, right? You said they fall into some particular categories.
Yeah.
So is it you know the list and you pick some category, or you pick whatever you want and it automatically forms?
Yeah. So if you participate in Synopsis Science Fair, and you have a project idea, usually you choose your own category. So when you're applying to get into Synopsis Science Fair, you choose your own category. So this can be kind of chemical engineering, bioinformatics, and there's 20 categories, and you choose from them. Choose the one that specifically fits your project, and the reviewers of your application will look through it. If it fits, then they'll just keep you in that category. If not, then they'll just move you to a different category. And every category, so when you choose your category, there may be maybe 40 people in your category. So they're going to split these 40 people up into groups of 8 through 12, and these are the people that you're going to be competing with for category awards. Yeah.
Is there a minimum age for Broadcom Masters?
For Broadcom Masters, it's for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, except there is no minimum age, because Well, you have to be in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade to apply, but I actually know this year there was a 10-year-old who went to Broadcom Masters because he skipped 2 grades and he was in 6th grade and he got into Broadcom Masters because he was really interested in Mars and he really wanted to help humans get to Mars. And so he did a project on that and he was able to successfully carry it out. And so there's really no minimum age, but you have to be in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. Yeah.
And when is Synopsis Science Fair?
Synopsis Science Fair is in March. I don't really know the specific date, but if you want to participate in Synopsis Science Fair, application deadlines are like really coming up. So if you want to apply, you should apply now. Yeah.
How long did your experiment take?
Okay, so I started my experiment maybe in November, which so in November I began to plan things out, to buy my materials, set up a space in my house, and in winter break I conducted my experiments, and after that I just did some analysis, I did some concluding, and the poster board setting up, and well, I mean, it just carried through like March, and then I presented my project this past October at DC. So the experiment itself probably took half a year. But I wasn't working on it every single day. It was maybe once a week, like an hour, and then for like a week long, you maybe want to conduct your experiment really carefully and maybe take like winter break or Thanksgiving break or something like that to go through your experiment and conduct it accurately.
And
Yeah.
like what math knowledge you think to have for
What
Broadcom
math
Masters?
knowledge?
Yeah.
So
Like,
it
yeah.
what-
What level math should be in when?
So for science research, you don't really have to be it really depends on your project, because if you're going to do a project that is in math or computer science, then you want to have a good like math foundation for your experiment. But if you're going to do something like me with like plants or engineering or biology, then you don't really have to have a strong math background. So there's really no specific math level that you have to be at in order to participate, because I've seen people who are in pre-algebra who participated, I've seen people who are in calculus who have participated. So it really doesn't matter what level of math you are in, as long as you have an interest in your topic. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you want to get started right now.
Yeah.
During the course, but you started the experiment in November. Does that mean that when you started preparing for it, your experiment result is not there yet? You just try to get started.
Oh, so when you apply for Synopsis, you don't have to finish your experiment yet. You just have to have a basic research plan of what you're going to do in the next 6 to 8 months. So, so the earliest times when Synopsis applications comes out are September, and so most people apply by October or November, but the latest deadline is January, but you really want to get your applications done before that. And what's in the application is just some normal information that you would put on a permission slip, and but the main part is your research plan. And so in the research plan, they're going to give you a document with a lot of questions, and these questions are going to be: what is your plan? What is your idea? What are your objectives? What variables are you going to measure? And you want to plan these things out carefully and write them down, and then submit it to Synopsis, and then they'll approve it or reject it. Yeah. Any more questions? No. Okay.
How
Yeah.
the mentor
mentor,
help you?
yeah.
And
Okay, so it really depends on what school you go to. So for my school, there was this program called the Science Research Program, and it's provided by my school. And what it does is it pairs up, so all 8th graders who are interested can sign up for this program. And what it does is it pairs you up with an 8th grade science teacher. So in my case, I got paired up with my biology teacher. And I was really lucky because he was a really good mentor. And what the mentor does is they don't really help you that much with your experiment. So don't rely on them to give you ideas to help you conduct your experiment, because what the mentor does is you just put their name on your application and they kind of give you advice and they provide the logistical stuff. But if your school doesn't really have this like this mentorship program, then you would really want to contact your science teacher as your mentor. So your student's science teacher. So ask them, can you be my mentor? And it really doesn't take a lot to be a mentor. All you have to be as a mentor is just to put your name on your student's application, and just to provide like a little bit of assistance through the project. And this mentor can even be parents. Like most parents, you can have a privately sponsored project in which the parent is the mentor, and the parent just puts their name on the forums and just serve as like the mentor. So sometimes mentors give a lot of help, and sometimes you don't really have to give like all the help you have if you're a mentor. So if you're concerned that your son doesn't really have a science research program to follow with, then you can be a mentor yourself for your son. It's just, I really benefited from having a mentor at my school because I had no idea what science research was, and I had no idea how to do my project. So my mentor kind of gave me the basic information of how synopsis works, how science research works, and what to do. Any more questions? Yeah.
For the project, do you need to form a team to participate?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I was an individual because I just didn't really have the time to work with someone else and figure out like time schedules because I was a little busy in 8th grade. But I think most people maybe like half of the people at Synopsis participate in a team. And I think it's great to participate in a team because you get to feed off of both people's informative backgrounds, and they get to collaborate to make better ideas. But if you're really like short on time, or you really you can't really work around your schedule to fit someone else's, then I would recommend working as an individual. Also, if you have an idea that you're really interested in and you think really relates to yourself, then you might want to work on an individual project. Another thing that I have is that for Broadcom Masters, 29 of the finalists were individuals, and 29 of the finalists were individuals, and there was only one team. So for applying to Broadcom Masters, I think individuals might have some priority, but in terms of synopsis, partner projects are usually a little bit more successful because there's the experience of 2 people. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestion on how to improve presentation?
Okay, so one really key suggestion is to do debate. So if your school offers like a debate or speech program, I would highly encourage you to participate in that, because even if you're not good at maybe talking or communicating right now, speech and debate really like helps you speak in front of a large audience, speak in front of people that you don't know, and really communicate your ideas effectively. Because in debate, you want to look at both sides of something, and really, debate is kind of similar to science research presentations in a way, because you're talking with someone, and although you're not really arguing with your judge, you kind of have to answer their questions well and find a way to answer them. So debate really helps. In addition, if it's like a week before the actual science fair, you're going to want your child to maybe present in front of you or present in front of a teacher and give them some advice or ask them some questions about their project to kind of give like a mock presentation. You know? Yeah. Any other questions?
Like when you're in the Broadcom Master, like do you feel what area those kids come to them?
Yeah, so in Broadcom Masters, not everyone is really like academically rigorous. So like all it takes to become a Broadcom Masters is if you're really interested in your area of science. So I met people who are doing science on maggots, like these little insect creatures. I met people who were doing projects on teeth. I met people who are doing projects on dark matter. I met people who were doing projects on the brain. So these people came from many different states, many different areas, and they're really diverse. So not all of us are just only interested in science. So all of them have some other backgrounds, like they play some sports or they do some other activities that give them some personality. So Broadcom Masters is a great place to meet these 30 other people, or 29 other people who are interested in science, but they're not only interested in science, they're also interested in other areas too. Any other questions?
Can I know, can you
Yeah.
introduce what other extracurricular you do?
What other extracurriculars I do?
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned math. I really like math because I've been participating in some competitions since I was in 5th or 6th grade, and I've been working on math for like a long time. It's kind of just been like a side extracurricular that I do. But my favorite hobby is probably volleyball. I spent a lot of time on volleyball, school teams, club teams, and I think a sport really helps you manage your time well, because with a sport you're going to be able to have to organize your time well and really get things done in a quick amount of time. And also a sport teaches you teamwork and different lessons about failure. And for that reason, I really recommend everyone to do a sport. In middle school, I also did science bowl. So science bowl is, for my school, the science bowl training was really rigorous. So there was a really selective elimination process, and everyone was really competitive about it. There were tests every week, and there were buzzing rounds every week in which we had to do to get selected into the team. But science bowl was also a good experience to because we had to read on different books every week to see, because we were tested on them. And what science research did for me was that I was able to see science as a whole and see the different areas of science and what interesting parts there were. And science research kind of helped me come up with my experiment, but really coming up with my experiment was more on daily inspiration. So in middle school, I also did a little bit of debate. I was not a heavy debater. I only went to 2 or 3 tournaments a year. I just kind of like debate because it was just fun, and it's nice to see both sides of an argument, not just to be affirmative or negative, but to argue on both sides. And it really helped me become a better communicator and to speak better. Yeah.
Does being in the science research program automatically get you to sign up
For synopsis? So that's a good question, actually. So do you go to Harker?
Yeah.
Okay, so for Harker, it's for 8th graders. So if you sign up as an 8th grader, then you'll be paired with either Miss Morganson, Dr. Artis, or Miss Pang. And these different teachers are going to tell you how to complete your forms, and they're going to give you deadlines. So you should complete stuff by the deadlines and follow their instructions carefully. And I know most people who have gone through the Harker Science Research Program, they've all been accepted into synopsis, unless they had some crazy, outrageous idea that was not possible. Even though most of them, like me, I was actually rejected my first time through synopsis. I had to make some edits and submit my application again. But most people who apply through Harker, most people who apply get in after some time. But it's kind of hard to get in on your first try unless you do a really good job through the research plan. But don't be discouraged if you get rejected the first time, because it's really easy to make the changes and just submit it again. So yeah, most people do make it to synopsis. Is that it? Okay.
You have so many activities. How do you manage it?
It wasn't actually that many activities, actually. It's just 2 or 3 main activities. So I just spent some science research time over the weekends, over the breaks. Obviously there is vacation time too. And sometimes just take breaks. Breaks help you work faster. I don't really know, just you get home from school and just do your homework maybe for 2 hours or 3 hours, and then just go to sleep. And then mostly on the weekends you just do some activities that you really like to do.
What suggestions do you give the other middle school students or elementary school students and also to their parents?
Okay, so to middle school students, I would really recommend you to really become interested in science, because right now, although you think that science may be boring, or you think that science may just be sitting in a classroom listening to the teacher's lectures, really get into science research, because when you get into science research, you're going to be able to explore an area that you really truly like. It's not based on the school's curriculum or your teacher's curriculum. It's based on your own motivation. And when you get into this area of science, you're going to really want to carry out your experiments. And it's really fun when like you get positive results, or when you get when you're able to collect something well, or like collect data well, or when you're able to present your project even. So really carry out through science research. I hope this presentation has encouraged you to do science research too. And to parents, probably just like don't push your children to do science research if they don't want to, and don't force them to do an idea if they don't want to. Really let your child like think through an idea that they really want to do, because that's probably going to prove the best results for them, and it's going to like give them the best experience too, because they're going to have fun carrying out their project in science research. But also when your kids need support or something, help them. Like maybe like give them a space in your give them a space in your house to conduct their experiment, or buy materials for them, or just encourage them through the process, and don't force them to do anything.
So will you share how your parents support you?
Okay, so in the beginning of science research, my parents also had really like no idea what science research was. So they weren't really like forcing me to do any idea. Obviously, they had some ideas of their own that appealed to them, but in the end, I ended up not taking them because sometimes like parents' ideas really are different from a kid's ideas. Like a kid's creativity can vary differently from a parent's creativity, and sometimes a kid's creativity is all you really need to help change the world a little bit. And what my parents did to help me was they gave a section of a room in the house to conduct my experiment. So I was able to grow my plants there, and I had a grow light, and they also bought me materials when I needed them. And even though sometimes it was like late at night when I conducted my experiments, they were just like, oh, it's okay, just take your time, look through it. And in the end, they didn't really focus too much on the outcome. So like, don't focus on getting the awards. Like all of me, my parents, both me and my parents, we were all really surprised when I even got like any award, because I really didn't expect anything as a first timer, because I had a lot of friends, such as people who I met at Broadcom MASTERS, who participated in science fairs in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and that's how they even got an award. So don't expect too much out, and I think that's probably going to encourage the scientist out of every person.
Can you recommend a book like
Yeah.
like how the process of doing science research or engineering project?
A book? So I don't really know any specific books that teach you how to do science research. I think science research is more about the experience of trial and error. So just try it. Like even if your science research program only limits you to do an 8th grade project, try it in 6th or 7th grade. Or even just like, you don't have to participate in synopsis science fair. Just do a simple experiment at home if you're interested. And I mean, there's no really like book to help you through the process. You really want to think of what activity, like what problem you're trying to solve, and how you're going to try to solve that problem, and think through it carefully, because there's no book that conforms to every single different project. So every project is different. So think through your own project and be unique about it. Okay.
Yeah, I have tried to Google search the science fair ideas for middle school students and for 10th grade, the maybe come up. So what do you think if you just go online to find the science fair ideas?
So I actually did that in the beginning when I had no ideas. So like in the beginning of 8th grade, I really wanted to do science research because it sounded fun and it really appealed to me. And so I just searched up science research project for middle schoolers, and what I found was sunscreen. I found like all these ideas that were like, they were really interesting, and they didn't really appeal to me because everyone can think of those ideas and they're available to everyone. So I really would not recommend going online and searching for projects for middle school students or projects for 6th graders or like any of like that, because those are projects that other people thought about, and most of the time they're not really going to appeal to you as a person. So you really want to take your project from a daily inspiration. So for example, if you're reading a magazine or you're reading the newspaper or you're just one of your friends is complaining about something, then you might something just might go off in your mind and you might think, oh, that's actually a good idea for our science research experiment. And after doing that, you want to do some research online to see if anyone has ever done something in that area before. And if no one has and you think it's a novel idea, then just go for it and never really limit yourself to think what you can't do, because I know a lot of times middle schoolers can achieve something that even professionals can't with their creativity and excitement. So don't limit yourself to some simple things. Really go for big ideas, and if you can't achieve the big ideas, at least you have a goal or an aspiration that you can talk about, or something that you can talk about too.
So can you comment the tech challenge in San Jose Tech Museum?
So I've never really participated or in the tech challenges. I know my brother has gone there a few times, but I don't really know. So I don't know if the tech challenges have anything to do with science research, but yeah, just for science research, you really want to take your idea from something that appeals to you as a person, not appeals to the general public. So when it appeals to you, you're going to really have a fun time doing it. You're going to love doing your science research experiment, and you're going to have a good time doing it, and you're going to do it well too. So that's really what you want to focus on. So don't do an activity just for the sake of having a good research project. You really want to just do what you like to do. So do what activities you really like to do. Yeah. Any other questions?
Each middle schoolers here ask one question.
Okay. Brian, you start.
Maybe you can, I think you can ask some questions. Ask the middle school students. Ask some questions.
Oh, I asked them questions?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Questions about them or questions about science?
Anything.
Anything.
Ask them. Yeah.
Okay.
So how many of you guys are in 6th grade?
Where are you, Brian?
How many of you guys are in 7th grade? 8th grade? Anyone? Let's see. Should I do a question about science?
Sure.
Okay. What's the organelle of a cell that provides the energy?
Mitochondria. Yeah, mitochondria. That's nasty, right?
So how many of you guys, what school do you guys all go to? Parker? How about you guys? Kennedy? You go to Harker. How about you guys? What? Oh, JLS, I see. How about you guys? What? Oh, I see. Okay. So there's many different middle schools, so just, yeah, go for science research and contact your science teacher if you want to do a project.
And who has a science research experience?
Has anyone done science research before? Anyone? No? Does anyone do math competitions or math club at their school? Yeah? That's good. Yeah. Does anyone do science bowl? No?
Harvard Science
Yeah.
Bowl start.
What?
Which grade can they participate in Science Bowl at Harvard?
At Harker?
Any grade.
All grades?
All grades.
All grades good.
But is there a club that you can join?
For science bowl? At Harker? There's a program, it's run by Miss Kadam. She's a math teacher. and just ask her if your child wants to participate in science club. I mean, I didn't really participate in 6th grade. I just kind of dropped in at the meeting, saw what it was like. In 7th and 8th grade, I really started participating in science club. Yeah?
Is the science research program like something that's like after school?
Oh yeah, it's all after school. So usually you choose a day, like I was Wednesday, so like there's like an hour and a half where you work with your mentor, and your mentor gives you updates on what the deadlines are and stuff like that. So it's all after school. But sometimes sometimes you might have to go in for like once or twice you might have to go in during lunch, but
Someone has any ideas, science research ideas? Sort of.
any science research ideas? Anyone?
Any topics, ideas that are interesting?
Yeah.
How common were like space like related science fair
Projects?
Yeah, projects.
So at Broadcom Masters, out of the 30, there are actually quite a few on space, actually. So if you're interested in astronomy, it's a really cool subject, I think, because we don't really know a lot about space because it's far away. And I know I had a friend who was in my team at Broadcom Masters, and she did something on dark matter, which is probably something no one has ever seen before. But she was still able to do a project on it because she was able to model dark matter using something. In terms of how many projects there were in astronomy, there was one person who did something on, there were 2 people who did something on Mars, one person who did something on astronomy, one person who did something on airfoils, so probably like 5 projects out of the 30. So it's a pretty good amount, actually. I didn't really see any projects at Synopsis about space because I wasn't in their category, so I didn't really go around and see everyone's projects. So I really only got to see all the plant people's projects.
Not a question, but a comment. Out of the 30 finalists, 15 are girls, and 15 are boys.
So,
and California actually have 8, and out of this area we have 4 or 5. So
I'd say 5.
5. So that's basically
4 or 5.
where they're from.
So like, obviously California is very competitive because, I don't know, like it's just the way it is. So don't be scared when you go to science research like competitions or science research fairs because it's California. Yeah.
Are there like science competitions in high school?
Yeah, definitely. So Broadcom Masters is a middle school competition, but there's a counterpart for Broadcom Masters in the high school, and that's Regeneron STS, and that's for seniors. So if you're able to participate in Broadcom Masters, that really gives you an idea of what it's like to go to Regeneron. There's also another competition called the Intel ISCF, which you qualify through Synopsis, and that's for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So that's why I would recommend starting early in middle school because you really get the experience of what it's like to do science research. So in high school, you'll be more experienced and you'll probably be able to conduct more complicated experiments. Yeah.
What grades are Synopsis open to?
Synopsis is open to, I know it's definitely open for 6th through 12th graders. Definitely for all of those grades. I'm not sure about elementary school. It might be open to like 5th graders or something, but definitely 6th through 12th graders.
I was thinking go to a hacker open house apply middle school for my child. Can you give me good reason to
go to
actually
Harker?
take action to go to hacker middle school?
Okay, so there's many reasons why Harker is really good. I think it really has a really strong organization. It's really organized, and it really encourages you to do whatever you want. They have like almost a club or a program for any different activity. So especially if you want to do science research, Harker's SRP program or science research program is very organized, and it really helps you as a first timer in science research. In addition, Harker's teachers are also really encouraging. They really want to help you through like learning, and they'll be willing to sit by you and help you through stuff. If you want to discuss about Harker, then I can talk with you after the meeting. I can tell you some other stuff too. Any other questions, comments?
In a whisper. Speak up.
Very good experience.
Can you give some examples of what the past alumnums are doing right now?
Broadcom
If you know it,
Masters?
yeah, if you know any of them.
Like, what do you mean what they're doing right now?
Are they doing well in high school? Are they
okay,
even
so-
in college?
So
I have no idea.
I know someone who is currently a junior, and he was a Broadcom MASTERS finalist 2 years ago, and now he's actually doing really well in science research competitions. He was he was a Siemens finalist, which is really hard to get because like only a few people are chosen in the entire country. Also, he's been working in many professional labs over the summer. In addition, I know most people who have done science research in middle school have carried through high school because it's just such an amazing experience, especially if you get to go to Broadcom Masters. And I think it's really nice that a lot of people are interested in the area of STEM because STEM is really what's going to change the world, and it's going to change the way in which we act, the way in which the way in which we behave, and just what we have in our world. Because like computers, like even ceilings or like architecture, they're all inspired by like science and technology, engineering, and math. So having a head start in STEM in middle school is really important because it cultivates the interest if your child is interested in STEM, and it's also a really great and expansive area in which there's lots of different career paths or different interests that you can follow. But getting back to the question, let's see. There's also the girl that was across from me in State Science Fair. She lives in Sacramento, and she says that Broadcom Masters has really changed her life, basically, because she's been able to connect with all of her friends from Broadcom Masters, the 29 other people that are also finalists, like her. And we inspire each other, basically. So, like, when one of us does something good, then everyone else is really excited. So it's really a great network of people because we're all interested in science, and we all have a passion for it, too.
Yeah, you mentioned that your total of regarding your research of your peers or other people who are students can. Yeah, what's your thought?
Okay, so I'll just start listing off some of my friends' projects. So one of my friends, they also did a plant science project involving the drought. They were actually in the same category as me. And they did something involving hydroponics, which is layering plants on top of each other to grow them in order to minimize the amount of space that it takes to grow plants, because plants take up a lot of space. Another one of my friends, they did a project on food. So like when they look at food, if it looks like if it's appetizing versus if it looks unappetizing, and their actual taste perception. So they had cookies that were red and green and cookies that were a normal brown color, and they gave these cookies to our friends or our peers at our school, and they tested if they asked the people that were in their experiment whether the cookies tasted good, and they found that if the cookies were red or green, or if they looked unappetizing, then people thought they tasted like less good or like worse. Another one of my friends, they were Broadcom Masters semifinalists, and they were a group project. They did a project involving e-cigarettes and their ability to cause mutations in cells. So that's kind of related to cancer, and that's in the area of chemistry and medicine. I also had a friend who made a machine to test which ping pong ball went the farthest length. And I mean, it's all simple experiments that come, because I know that friend was interested in ping pong, so he must have been really interested in which ping pong ball was probably the best. And it comes from daily inspirations, like I mentioned before. So let's see if I know any other questions. One of my friends at Broadcom Masters, she made an app that helped you memorize vocabulary words better, because she was actually participating in the National Vocabulary Bee, and she was having trouble memorizing words. So from that, she was inspired to create an app to help other people memorize vocabulary words better, and she created an app for that. and she was also a Broadcom Masters finalist.
Is that app on Apple Store?
It's not on Apple Store yet, but I know I have another friend at Broadcom Masters who actually published his app on Google Play, I think. Yeah. And then my friend who created the vocabulary app, she's also aiming to publish it on the App Store too. So it's really great to have this experience just to see how much the world is interested in science actually. So you're really inspired by it and you just want to continue.
Ask questions. Boys.
Where's Steven?
There are 15 finalists are boys.
Ask the question. I know you like to talk a lot.
What is this?
Ask. Some questions? Oh.
Yay.
Hey, I know you like spelling. Do you share some? Oh yeah. Something you learned? What?
You have a question?
Brian has a question.
Oh, what's your name? How about the science magazine? Do you have any?
Probably. There's Science News for Students, which is an online magazine, which is actually sponsored by the company that is in charge of Broadcom Masters. So you're going to find a lot of science inspiration on that. There's also National Geographic, and just like any news articles that you can find online. So, or just your science textbook even. There's also, just National Geographic and Science News. I think those are good.
Since I know you math also qualified you subject, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you share more your
math experience? So I actually I actually got interested in math through my school's program because in elementary school, my school made everyone in the school take this contest called the CML. And I was really interested in the CML, and I just really wanted to get a perfect score on one test. So in order to get a perfect score, I worked through some practice problems, and I was able to get a perfect score. And what I found from math was it's actually pretty interesting to work through some math problems. Like math is kind of also not just sitting in a math classroom listening to your teacher lecture. It's kind of exploring the different methods to approach a problem. And doing math competitions is not just about achieving like good scores on math competitions. It's also about like the learning process and how you approach a different problem, how you approach different problems. Because obviously in math competitions, you're not going to be able to like know every single problem on the test. So you're going to have to adapt your knowledge and apply it to something new that you've never seen before. So for math, it's I just did a lot of practice problems, and I guess it wasn't boring. Obviously, it was a little bit of fun, and it's really fun to go to the competitions and just to work with other people on math. Yeah?
You haven't answered Brian's question.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to the question.
Right.
Yeah.
Does CML stand for Continental Math?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you taken it before?
Yeah.
What's your question?
What does CML stand for?
Oh.
CML's out of 30. It's out of 6. A little bit of 500.
No questions?
Yay!
You ask more questions. Maybe next time.
Okay.
That is, time is it?
Yay.
Okay.
It's 8:55.
Okay, 算周星星了。
Thank you all. Now you know the answer.
Thank you for coming.
Good job, Cynthia.
Good job.
Applied science.
Very good.
Yeah.
Can we email you for
Yeah, sure.